All right, well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining Equal Justice Works today for this informational session on how to become an Equal Justice Works Fellow with the Housing Justice Program. My name is Brooke Meckler, and I am the director of our law school engagement and advocacy team here at Equal Justice Works, and I'm excited to welcome you all here today to learn more about this program, learn about the successes that we've had so far, hear from one of our former fellows who was able to have such a great impact within his project, and to also find out how you can apply and how you can get involved. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Public Programs, my colleague, Hana Hausnerova, to kick things off.
Thanks, Brooke. And hi, everyone. My name is Hana, and I'm the Director of Fellowship Programs, as Brooke mentioned, here at Equal Justice Works. And so I support our housing, disaster, and crime victims focused fellowship programs. I'm super excited that you took the time to be with us today. I hope most of you have finished your final exams and are just gearing up for the fun summer of studying for the bar. Without further ado, we'll get started. First, I wanted to walk you through the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be part of a fellowship program. Then we're going to dive specifically into the housing justice program. We'll hear from our awesome alumni, Palmer Heenan, and then we'll walk you through on how to apply to be part of the housing justice program. But first, it wouldn't be a presentation if we didn't start with our mission. Our mission is that we create opportunities for lawyers to transform their passion for equal justice into a lifelong commitment to public service. And we do that through our Design Your Own fellowship programs, as well as through our fellowship cohort programs. And they're a little bit different, so I'll just go quickly through that. The fellowship programs is something that Equal Justice Works designs around a specific civil legal aid issue or area. We then get funding for it from foundation or the federal government. We then put out a request for proposals for host organizations, so the legal services providers. They apply. We select the legal services providers that will be part of this program. And then the legal service providers are the host organizations, and they are the ones who recruit and hire on our Equal Justice Works Fellows for a 2-year fellowship program. And we are super proud of the fact that more than 85% of our fellows stay on in public service after the fellowship. So let's talk a little bit about the fellowship programs that are now available. You can take a look on our website, and there you will see that we're currently running the disaster, the housing, and the crime victims program. You can there then also on the website see what the host organizations that are working in any of those programs are. And there on the website, you can also see if we are hiring at this time, and we are going to be hiring at this time. And that's why we're having this info session. So yay, great timing. And then if you're interested, you can definitely let us know, but then you will also need to apply directly with the host organization. So as I said, these are our current fellowship programs. But here today, we're here to talk about the Housing Justice Program. And I just really want to take a few minutes to highlight this fantastic fellowship program that we're really proud of and that was incredibly successful. So the Equal Justice Works Housing Justice Program uniquely combines the efforts of lawyers and community organizers working collaboratively as fellows to address the dire problem of eviction in low-income and underserved communities. Fellows hosted at legal aid and grassroots organizations work strategically to help tenants access justice and empower communities stand up against unfair housing practices. So the program was first piloted in Richmond, Virginia, following the Princeton Eviction Labs report, ranking Richmond as the second worst eviction city in the US. And this chart also indicates that there are many other cities that are also a bad actor or have a lot of eviction issues. And the check marks next to the cities really show that that is, although we piloted the program just in Richmond, we have now expanded the program to all of these areas. So really hitting almost all 10 of the cities that were identified by the Eviction Labs report. So within the Housing Justice Program, each one of our fellows has a different role in the program, and they work together to strategize and achieve the largest possible impact. The organizers are integral to the initiative, as they are embedded in the community and help low-income residents to organize tenant associations and provide education around rights and resources. The organizers help to identify households in need of immediate legal assistance and refer them to attorney fellows responsible for eviction defense and other direct representation. Other fellows were responsible for devising strategies to promote legal tenant protections in Virginia and for organizing meetings with legislators. So here you see our 8 past fellows, and really they're focusing on legal representation, education, and outreach, and that's hopefully leading to, and that has led and will continue to hopefully lead to systems change. Through their collaboration, the fellows were not only able to prevent evictions for thousands of tenants, they were able to meaningfully improve tenants' protections in the state. To list a few examples of major systems change, the fellows were able to secure a year-long eviction freeze for a local public housing authority, historically one of the highest evictions in Richmond. They used fair housing arguments to oppose the demolition of public housing projects that would displace residents to build a sports stadium. And they helped to pass a new protection for source of income discrimination in Virginia, which prevents private landlords from arbitrarily refusing voucher holders. To help facilitate these massive achievements, Equal Justice Works provides additional support to the Housing Justice Program fellows. We provide comprehensive training responsive to the needs of the fellows. For example, Equal Justice Works provides professional media training to help the Housing Justice Program fellows develop communication strategies. With this support, the fellows secured more than 100 media placements over the 2-year fellowship to get the word out about the state of housing in Virginia, including national outlets like the Washington Post and PBS. Equal Justice Works also facilitates networking with experts in the field, such as those of Eviction Lab and the National Coalition for Civil Right to Counsel, and Right to Counsel in NYC. We also help to create platforms for collaboration among the fellows, including listservs, meetups, conferences. While the 8 fellows who served in the 2019 Housing Justice Program have completed their terms, they all had the opportunity to stay on as staff at their host organizations following their fellowship. So with that was a brief overview of the Housing Justice Program as it occurred. And now I'd love to be able to open the door for Palmer to come in and share a little bit more about his experience. So Palmer, maybe I can kick it off with an intro question. Can you share a bit of information about your role in the Housing Justice Program, what you worked on, and what legal service organization you worked with?
Absolutely. I'm going to say that we should have used the PBS NewsHour clip that you had earlier as my picture, because man, I look so much better in that picture. It's all good. So, hey, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. My name is Palmer. I was a lawyer embedded with the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society as part of the as part of the Housing Justice Program. So my role essentially was to provide individual and systemic representation to tenants facing eviction. And I did so, like I said, at the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society, working with 2 other legal aid groups, the Legal Aid Justice Center and the Virginia Poverty Law Center, which sort of took on more like public housing roles and sort of statewide advocacy roles during the course of the program.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Can you also maybe share how you collaborated with other fellows outside of just your host organization?
Yeah, well, we were, I think, really lucky in the way that EJW sort of set up the program because we had 3 different legal aid groups, all of which sort of had housing arms, housing projects that got set up through the Housing Justice Program. So I was at the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society, and I guess you could kind of look at it as we were the tip of the spear, right? So we were the ones that were sort of in court every day, litigating hundreds, thousands of tenant eviction cases, as well as doing some of the larger scale systemic advocacy surrounding groups of individual evictions. But we were what is called an LSC funded organization, which means we were not able to, say, directly hire organizers in the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society. So that's why I said we're kind of lucky. We had these two other legal aid groups, the Virginia Poverty Law Center and the Legal Aid Justice Center, which also had fellows, and they didn't have the same kind of like funding restrictions. So they were able to hire organizers. And so we were basically able to collaborate with those two groups to get cases. And I will be perfectly frank, before I came to the Housing Justice Program, I had been a lawyer, but I had never worked with organizers. And it was transformative to the way I practice. And also, I had never really worked with independent groups who kind of all had the same mission, but different resources and methods of approaching the problem. And yeah, it completely changed the way I practice law, to be perfectly honest with you. I think we'll maybe talk a little bit later about what I currently do, but say working with unions, working with non-lawyers, working with folks who actually have boots on the ground, really sort of just completely opened my eyes to the way in which sort of lawyers can be a little bit too eager maybe to go to court, or too eager to be like, well, this is the way we have to do it, and not taking as much input from like the people that are actually experiencing this problem. So, going out into the community with an organizer who's been connected to that community for years or decades, or what have you, it radically transforms the way that you approach the practice of law, especially like social justice fields. So yeah, collaboration was amazing. And like I said, we were lucky in the way that EJW had kind of set the program up.
Thanks, Palmer. It's really, really always warms my heart hearing kind of that collaboration and how it was transformative. So,
Yeah.
So thanks for that. Well, we already said that the Housing Justice Program accomplished so much over the 2-year period, but can you elaborate on one or two of your favorite examples or ones that were especially meaningful to you?
Sure. So I'm gonna lawyer this and choose 3, and I'm gonna talk about something that was meaningful to me professionally, meaningful to me personally, and I think meaningful sort of for the future of housing advocacy in Virginia. So let me start by saying meaningful to me professionally. Participating in the Housing Justice Program at the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society, I had a really good support from the other attorneys in the office who were just like, oh my gosh, there are finally bodies to, confront this problem that we've kind of been shouting about for the last decade or 2 decades, this crisis that Richmond's experiencing where, 1 in 3 low-income tenants in a given year will experience eviction, which is astounding when you think about it. If you walk into a McDonald's where people are making minimum wage, chances are if there are 3 workers, at least one of them that year will be evicted. It's kind of staggering when you think about the scope of the problem. But regardless, so meaningful professionally, they provided me all the resources and sort of the knowledge I needed and then said, go nuts. So they let me come up with some really sort of, at the time, seemingly cockamamie theories about applying consumer law and false claims law to housing cases. And we spent like sort of the better part of 14 months building this consumer case in the lower courts in Virginia. And we finally took it to the circuit court and we won a decision that basically applied Virginia consumer law to landlord-tenant transactions, which had never happened before in the state. So that sort of catapulted me to being able to do other things, taking on sort of future positions where I am now and the position that I had immediately after leaving the Housing Justice Program. So that was meaningful professionally. Meaningful for the future, and I think this goes to kind of show how well supported we were. As I was transitioning out of my fellowship, they basically asked me like, hey, you've been here now for 2 years, like, we would like you to stay. We understand you can't, but could you provide us with recommendations? So I kind of wrote up like a whole memo of like, here are the things that I think need to happen. Here are the resources that need to come into play. And I'm still talk to all the folks, all the former fellows and folks that I used to work with, and they've implemented it. So they now have sort of a really strong housing program that can maintain itself over the course of the future. So that's awesome. Meaningful for me personally, and I think here's where maybe I'll get a little tear jerky, but I apologize. So I had a client who came to me and she was low income. She had a disabled son who was about like 6 years old, and she was essentially living in, what she called the slum. So she was paying like $1,400 a month to live in this place that when it rained, and not like a heavy rain, just like anytime it rained, water would literally pour down her house. Like I came over to her house at one point while it was raining, and it was just like, it was like water streaming into her roof. And she's, I mean, $1,400 a month is like, you'd expect to get something decent out of it. At the same time, her landlord was trying to evict her, even though she actually had paid her rent on time, mostly because she was complaining about the conditions. So we were able to countersue the landlord, get her eviction case dismissed. We got her, I think, about $10,000. And in the meantime, she was a veteran. She was a Gulf War veteran, and we were able to get her connected with the VA, and we got her essentially a subsidy to purchase her own home. And so while we're kind of fighting this eviction and getting her this money back, which she more than deserved because she had water coming in, the heat didn't work, it was a terrible, we got her a house. And actually one of the last things I did in my fellowship was I went over and like she had me over for dinner at this house that she had gotten kind of, you know, and we had helped her to get. It was amazing. So that was like a really meaningful personal story. And I think it goes to show you, like, you think housing justice, and, you know, we talk a lot about eviction, but housing is at the intersection of so many poverty related problems. So I started my legal career as a public defender, and obviously, you know, a lot of criminal issues come from and stem from problems of poverty. But, you know, I think poverty in many ways is a symptom of like things like housing instability, right? Systemically low wages, that kind of thing. But really, like, if you don't have somewhere safe to live, how are you going to get a job, right? How are you not going to get in trouble for trespassing, or not, you know, have your kids get in trouble for truancy or not going to school? Like, how are you going to have a regular doctor? It's just so many things sort of stem from this housing instability. So seeing this woman go from, you know, basically 2 weeks away from getting evicted to owning a house, which is like, wow, this really shows the power that being a housing advocate can have beyond just, hey, you get to stay in your house for another month.
Thank you, Palmer, for
Yeah,
sharing that really meaningful story. One of very many, I know, because I read all of your reports.
It was hard to choose.
So I know that that's one of many stories where you guys really impacted people's lives tremendously. And so thank you so much for that. I think you kind of already alluded to this question, but I'll ask again, and maybe I'll have something to add. How did the 2 years as an Equal Justice Works Fellow set you up for success in your career or just life, I guess, also?
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I was transitioning sort of from legal work to the housing justice program. And I think I was kind of a little bit listless. It's like, I knew I wanted to go into pro bono, but I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to land. Pro bono civil litigation. And so I think at sort of a high level, it kind of helped hone like, oh, this is an area that I want to focus on, right? Because housing is it's just such an important issue that affects people in so many different ways. But I think the advocacy that I got to do, I mean, it set me up to get recruited, which is why I left my fellowship. I would have been glad to stay at CBLAS, but unfortunately,
after your fellowship was
yeah,
over.
Yes, after my fellowship. That's what I mean. Yeah, after my fellowship, they tried to get me to stay, but anyway, I got recruited by the Virginia Attorney General's office during the previous administration to help run a systemic advocacy program for them. So they had never had a civil rights systemic advocacy program, and they asked me to come in and set it up. And I think that is entirely, I'm not even say almost entirely, it is entirely attributable to the work that I did while at the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society through the Housing Justice Program. And then when the administration changed, I also transitioned, and I'm now helping bring that same focus up at the DC Attorney General's office. I'm sort of focusing on attacking systemic poverty and affordable housing issues using sort of underutilized weapons in the arsenal, like the Fair Housing Laws and the False Claims Act, and even sort of like employment laws and consumer laws. So it's sort of the vast experience I got at CBLAS sort of allowed me, I think, to say, well, look, I can do this if this is what you guys need, and then be like, yes, that's exactly. So yeah, it's been incredible.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm super happy that you continue to have a very successful career in public service. And so really, really appreciate that. I guess last question, anything else you want to share with current law students considering if they should apply to be part of the housing justice program?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this question. Hana was kind enough to share with the agenda with me beforehand, I'll confess. And one thing that I think was that kind of came to my mind, and I'm not gonna talk trash about clerkships. Clerkships are great, but I really didn't want to do a clerkship coming out of law school, and so I didn't. And I would say that relative to that experience, you're going to get more out of something like this than you would a clerkship. And I get there's like prestige things associated with clerkships, fine, whatever, right? But I think it's hard to like take that leap. You're like, well, housing, like, is that the kind of lawyer where I just do housing, that I want to be for the rest of my life? And I just got to tell you, like, these legal aid groups, they are so happy to have someone helping confront this huge problem, that the amount that you'll learn and the kinds of cases that you'll get brought in on by attorneys that have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years, who just know what it is they're doing, will really provide you pretty much all the experience you'll ever need to litigate any kind of case. And so I don't know, I think it's a little bit scary because you're like, okay, this is sort of subject matter specific. I'm not sure if this is what I want to do. And I would just say, like, just jump in for a couple of years. Get your experience and see, because that's kind of the other nice thing about a fellowship from a career perspective, right? It has a beginning and an end date. And more often than not, if you want to stay, they're going to be like, yeah, please stay, right? But if you want to transition, there's like an easy kind of transition to do, be like, okay, like I'm ready to move on to this next thing. And so it really is like an incredible opportunity to do some amazing good, to get some amazing, trial experience, litigation experience, working with client experience, deposition experience. I took several depositions, which is a rarity for somebody just out of law school, that you can't beat with anything else directly out of law school.
Those are great last words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Palmer. Really appreciated it. And, stick around because maybe there'll be some questions directly from the students.
Of course, hopefully so.
Yeah. All right. Well, the great news is that we are currently expanding the program to Maryland, to South Carolina. We just expanded it throughout Virginia. So we just filled those positions already, but we still have 15 positions for legal fellows and 5 positions for organizer fellows to serve in Maryland and South Carolina available. We just finished we're still going through and just finished the part of selecting host organizations in South Carolina. We're still in the process of selecting host organizations in Maryland, but we know we will have these 15 positions available. In South Carolina, they should be starting to become available and posted on our website, as well as a host organization's websites in June of 2022. And in Maryland, the positions should be posted, I would say, like end of June, early July of 2022 as well. However, that does not mean that there's not something that we can do right now. And so we are really trying to help in the recruitment and gather interest before the positions even open up. And we really want to kind of provide you with this opportunity to get in early and apply early. So as a result, I'd encourage all of you, and we can drop this email into the chat. Oops. I encourage you all to email this email that's currently on the PowerPoint, and we'll drop it in the chat. Email your resume, when and where you're taking the bar, what state, city, or area you would be interested in working in within Maryland and South Carolina, as those are the 2 current options. Why you're committed to housing justice, and anything else you would like for us to know. So we're going to gather this information, and then we will be able to share it immediately with the host organizations once we finalize the selection process of those host organizations. So really a great opportunity to get in the door early. We'd also love to potentially schedule follow-up chats with you, answer any of your questions that you may have. And as always, I encourage you to visit our website. where you can scroll. If you kind of go into this landing page on Become a Fellow Housing Justice Program, you have to scroll a little bit towards the bottom, and there you can also enter in your name, year of graduation, email, and that's another great way to really stay in touch and hear more about housing justice program opportunities. We are looking to expand the program to other states as well in the next year or so, but currently we have these awesome opportunities available in Maryland and South Carolina. So please do let us know if you're interested, reach out, and we really look forward to hopefully you joining our next cohort of Equal Housing Justice Program Fellows and having a really meaningful experience, similarly to what Palmer and all of his other 7 colleague fellows have. And, I've gotten the opportunity and the joy to see them over the past 2 years, meeting each other, becoming incredibly involved, caring, and really becoming this strong unit that worked so hard towards really making a tremendous difference in Richmond. And because of their hard work, we were able to really expand this program to 3 other states, or throughout 1 state and to 2 other states. So thank you so much, Palmer, and to your colleague fellows for this incredible work, dedication that you all had. So with that, Brooke, I think I'd like to turn it back over to you to see if there's any questions, and I'll pop the email into the chat as well right now.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Palmer, for sharing all of that. I am checking the chat right now to see if there are any questions. You can also type it into the question and answer feature if you have one, either for Hana about the program logistics itself, or if you want to ask Palmer a question about his experience. We can stay on the line and talk more about this program and talk more about what a great opportunity it is to, do work in housing justice in a really impactful way. So please feel free to type in those questions.
I guess maybe while we give the fellow, the law students and other interested, maybe I can ask you one additional question, Palmer. I know that many of the other fellows did stay on at the legal services organizations, and I know that many of them now have the opportunity to actually, or some of them have the opportunity to supervise fellows as part of our new housing justice program. And so I wanted to know if you've heard anything of how that's going, and if they're really excited to be able to continue the amazing work that you all started.
Yeah, so I actually was just down visiting with them last weekend, now that I'm up in DC. I believe that everybody now that's gonna make me sound terrible. So I think everybody stayed, right? Because Caitlin's still in Petersburg. Yeah, Daryl and no, me and Daryl. I'm not the worst. Okay, sorry. That was close. I'm like, I know somebody else. Yeah, but Daryl's in private practice, sort of in North Richmond. So yeah, I think they're really excited. They made me promise that if the EJW leadership development training ever is back in DC, that I'll buy all the new fellows a drink. Because I'm not making legal aid salary anymore. So you have that to look forward to. But yeah, I think so. Caitlin has basically taken over Chris's position as more or less as managing attorney down in Petersburg. So I know she's looking forward to having some help. And yeah, Luisa's still at LIJC. Laura desperately needs a Daryl replacement. So yeah, I think they're really looking forward to it. They've been without. It's weird because they've been without fellows, because even though they themselves are fellows, the EJW element is gone. So yeah, I think they're really looking forward to it.
That's great to hear. I'm excited that they'll have the opportunity to all work together as a team again once our fellows start, which they just started. So so they should all be there and excited and happy.
Thank you both. So a question did come in. The question is, can bar takers in July 2022 apply for this fellowship, even though you don't get bar results until October for South Carolina?
Yes, that's a great question. And yes, this time around, we are opening it to bar takers this summer. We understand that. That's why we're doing this session. We totally want you to apply, and we understand that you may not know your results for the first few months. And I think we can all work together with that. So please, yes, definitely encourage you to apply. That is not an obstacle at all.
Great. And Palmer, I have a question for you when some of the recent graduates are looking at that list of questions that we posed. How would you answer, or how, if you were looking at the answer to why do I want to go into housing justice, what would stand out to you if you were looking at, resumes, and how would someone stand out in an application process like this coming out of the fellowship?
Do you mean like if I were reviewing in my current position at the DC Attorney General's office, like reviewing an application?
More so in your fellowship position, if you were like in a position to hire the next fellow, who would you be looking for?
Okay, understood. Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So I think one thing that is sort of worth, well, okay. So I think a lot of people think, okay, well, Palmer, like he did a bunch of litigation. He needed a lot of, litigation experience going into it. No, right? That is a trainable thing. You're a lawyer, you've been to law school. You're not going to struggle with, just a traditional eviction case because they're pretty straightforward, right? Landlords claiming that they didn't pay rent, which is 95% of evictions. Tenant is saying either they did or that there's some extenuating circumstance. So, law school has more than adequately prepared you to take this. But I think in sort of the course of all the sort of housing interviews I've either done, like myself, where I've interviewed folks applying for positions, or that I myself have actually been the interviewee, I think a recognition of the scope of the problem, right? And I think, it can seem a little bit overwhelming. In fact, it is overwhelming. It doesn't seem overwhelming. It's an overwhelming problem, right? But like just recognizing that what you're doing isn't just trying to keep people housed, but trying to, keep people alive, essentially, because, not having stable housing leads to all sorts of collateral consequences that can end up with people being sick, children. We don't need to sort of rehash all of that and go into that right now. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Because I think people that understand the scope of what they're facing are the exact kind of people that a legal aid is looking for, right? They know that they're going to have to equip you with the litigation and sort of additional legal skills that you didn't learn in law school going into this. And they will, between, the programs that, the housing justice program itself runs, and then by the programs that you'll get with the legal aid group that you're working with specifically, you'll get those skills, which is sort of the value added part of this. But yeah, I think that's what stands out to me, right? When I've done these interviews, people who are like, they understand that this is a systemic issue. It's not just people aren't paying their rent and that's a problem. It's a systemic issue. I really do think that's sort of just recognizing that as an issue is the exact kind of thing that we would be looking for in that kind of application. Sorry to give sort of an ideological answer, right? But I think that is the right answer. And I don't think people should be intimidated if they're like, well, I've never been inside a courtroom before. Most people haven't. 90% of lawyers never step inside a courtroom.
I think that's a very helpful answer. Thanks. Another question that came in is, if you don't pass the bar, are you cut from the fellowship? I don't mind answering this. Just, I think it will depend on the host organization and what their policy is for bar taking. Many organizations do let you take it a second time until you pass. That's just something you'll probably have to talk about with your supervisor. Palmer, I don't know if you had like a policy at your last place of work or where you work now.
You would not be cut. I'm barred in, how many states now? I'm barred in 4 states and like 3 federal jurisdictions. It's a lot of bar dues. But I've never worked for a nonprofit or governmental agency that there was a problem if you didn't get past the bar, they wouldn't give you another chance. In fact, I'm not sure if even big law is in that, perspective. But no, I mean, most states even have sort of a post-grad practice program where you'd be able to, in Virginia, you can actually practice in Virginia courts before you get your bar license. I'm pretty sure the same thing is true about Maryland. I'm not sure about South Carolina. And so that would extend, as long as you're being supervised by a barred attorney, that would extend even as you potentially retake the bar. So I wouldn't think there'd be any problems with that.
And I just like to add to it that what's great about our fellowship program model is that, yes, direct legal representation is part of it, but also we do outreach and education. We're also doing advocacy, and you don't need to be barred necessarily to do those things. So even if, I know you guys are all going to do great and I'm really confident, but if you need to retake the bar, then there's potentially opportunities where you can still be a great team player, really help the legal services organization that you're working with, and do some of the other outreach, education, and the policy work instead of the direct legal representation. So there's always opportunities there as well. Thank you for the question.
And I believe President Biden failed the bar 3 times, and he's the president. So don't be discouraged if you don't pass the first time. Another bar admission question. If you are not barred yet, will your pay start off on a reduced rate, like a non-attorney rate?
So again, I think that is something that you'd have to talk to the host organization. The way Equal Justice works is that we, through our subaward to the host organization, give a specific stipend for each fellow. That would not change if you're barred or not barred. We give the same stipend contribution to the host organization, but the host organization is the one who sets the scale based on what their salary scale is for all of their staff. So sometimes, so fellows in a fellowship are sometimes paid at different scales because they're at different host organization. We contribute the same amount to all of our fellows, and it's not affected by you passing or not passing the bar. But again, I'm really confident in all of you guys. You're gonna do great.
All right, are there any other questions for either Hana or Palmer about this program? Please feel free to type it in. And if not, we'll start to wrap up. I am going to put my email in the chat as well in case anyone has questions about some of our other programs or opportunities. So feel free to reach out to me with questions about this or anything else, just as a note.
And also, I'm just on the last slide. Laura Roach is actually our senior program manager who manages the Housing Justice Program. She can definitely be reached at the Housing Justice at equaljusticeworks.org email. So please do not hesitate to email her. Definitely share your resumes, express your interest. We can answer any and all follow-up questions that you may have. And I'll turn it over to Palmer to also say goodbye and leave you with any motivational thoughts.
A little motivational charge. Yeah, I just put my email in the chat. So for anybody who wants to follow up with me separately about any sort of questions about what it was like, or even if you just have broader questions about like, what should I be doing after law school, feel free to reach out. I dropped my email in the chat. It was great getting a chance to present with y'all. It was great getting to see Hana again. It's been a few months actually, because you came down to visit us in, was it December? Am I crazy?
After it was really hot and we were on a roof. So yeah, I hope
it's like Richmond in December. Like, it was early November. No, it was early November, wasn't it? I can't remember. Whatever. It's been a few months. Either way, it was great getting to see you as well. But I'll just say, I hope all of you give this some serious consideration. It's an amazing, practical, hands-on legal experience that I personally think more lawyers should have, just like that kind of experience. But it's also a way, I think, to uniquely affect people's lives, not just for a single instance, like, I used to do as a public defender, but really to change the arc or trajectory of someone's life, so that they can go from being evicted to a homeowner, right? So that they can finally get the mold out of their house. And when you've done that enough times, you realize, wow, this is like, I'm actually making a difference. And so it really is an incredible, unique opportunity. And I hope all of you will give it some really, really serious thought as to, how you can sort of pitch in and really help people in a maximally efficient way. You can affect thousands of lives over the course of a 2-year program like we did. So if you have any questions, like I said, feel free to follow up.
Well, thank you all so much for attending. This was recorded and we will send it out in an email after the fact. Please feel free to share it with others who you think might be interested or excited about a program like this. And we hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Good luck studying for the bar. Bye.